Okay, now Simon, you're going to read just a small excerpt for us from your AP World History textbook. Can you tell us the title and then just read a little bit? Just read like you typically would read, like if someone called on you, like the teacher, to read in class.
Asian transitions in an age of global change. After savoring the exhilaration that only those who have made a breakthrough discover can know, Vasco da Gama and his Portuguese crews received a number of rude shocks on the last legs of their epic voyage to India in 1498. Da Gama's exploratory probes were conducted in sailing ships that were a good deal smaller than the Portuguese merchant vessel depicted arriving in Japan a century later in the wonderful silk screen painting on page 514. After nearly 5 months at sea, his tiny flotilla of 4 ships made its way through the treacherous waters of the Cape of Good Hope on the southern tip of Africa and sailed into the Indian Ocean. After rounding the Cape, Da Gama's expedition followed the African coastline northward in search of other Christians and a port to take on fresh supplies. To their chagrin, most of the towns they encountered were controlled by Muslim Arabs. Some of the Arabs, including those at Mombasa, the largest commercial center on the coast, became hostile once they realized that the Portuguese were Christians. Conversations with the much friendlier Sultan, traders, and townspeople farther north at Melinda, however, left no doubt that Da Gama's expedition had indeed discovered a sea route from Europe to the fabled Indies. Da Gama and his compatriots were of course delighted and perhaps a bit awed by what they had achieved even before they crossed to India. Their every entry into the Indian Ocean meant that they had won a momentous victory over Spain. They had bested their Iberian rivals in a contest to find a sea route to East Indies that both nations had pursued at great expense for decades, and their triumph was all the more satisfying because they had proved correct the long-standing conviction of Portuguese navigators and map-makers that the Indian Ocean could be reached by sailing around Africa, and that in turn confirmed the Portuguese claim that Christopher Columbus' much-touted voyage across the Atlantic had been a failure. Columbus had not reached the Indies after all. He had made landfall at islands hitherto unknown to the Europeans and of undetermined value.
Okay, let's stop there, Simon. That section of the text that you just read to me from your world history text, what would you say, how would you summarize that as being about?
Da Gama's expeditions around Africa to reach India for the Portuguese.
Okay. Would you say it's mostly reporting the facts of what was done, or does it have opinion in there?
Mostly facts.
Okay, how do you know there's mostly facts there? What kind of things tell you?
It talks about dates and real people and what they achieved.
All right. Thank you.